Listen carefully because what I am about to say will not make sense at first, but it explains why so many relationships look fine yet feel empty inside. Have you ever felt that she is still there but not the same anymore? She talks but not like before. She listens but without that spark. So what changed? Did something big happen? Or did something small repeat so many times that it became everything? Let me ask you something deeper. When was the last time she felt truly understood by you? Not heard, not answered, but understood. And if you're thinking, I do talk to her, then ask yourself this. Do you listen to reply, or do you listen to feel what she's saying? Because those two things change everything. And here's another question. When she stopped sharing small things with you, did you notice it? Or did you only notice when the distance became obvious? Because distance never starts big, it starts in silence. In small moments where she wanted to speak but chose not to. Why? Because somewhere she felt it wouldn't matter. Now think about this. When she was giving you attention freely, did you value it? Or did you get used to it? Because there is a difference between feeling comfortable and becoming careless. And most men don't realize when that line gets crossed. Let me take you further. Have you ever seen her slowly stop reacting? Not fighting, not complaining, just becoming calm in a way that feels different. That calmness is not peace, it's distance. So ask yourself, why would someone who once cared deeply stop reacting completely? Is it because she changed, or because her effort was no longer being met? And here's the part most people avoid. When she tried to express something, did you truly take it seriously? Or did you brush it off as overthinking? Because every time her feelings are dismissed, a small part of connection breaks. Not loudly, but permanently. Now ask yourself this honestly, does she feel emotionally safe with you? Not physically, emotionally. Can she be open without feeling judged? Can she express without being corrected? Can she feel heard without needing to repeat herself? If the answer is not clear, then something is already slipping. And here comes the hardest question. When was the last time she felt wanted by you, not just needed? Because being needed feels like responsibility, but being wanted feels like desire, and desire cannot survive in a place where effort feels one-sided. So what happens next? Does she leave immediately? No, she stays, but differently. She starts giving less, expecting less, feeling less, until one day there is nothing left to give, and then you ask, what happened? But the real question was always, what was slowly happening that I never saw? Because desire doesn't disappear in one moment. It fades in the background while everything looks normal on the surface. And by the time you feel the distance, she has already been feeling it for a long time. When she feels unheard again and again, something very subtle begins to change inside her, but it does not show immediately. In the beginning, she still tries, she still speaks. She still explains herself, sometimes in different ways, hoping that this time you will truly understand what she means, not just hear the words, but feel the emotion behind them. But what happens when every time she opens up, the response she gets is surface level? When she shares something important and it gets turned into advice instead of understanding, or when it gets minimized, changed, or redirected into something else. Slowly, she starts realizing that expressing herself is not leading to connection, it's leading to frustration. And then a question starts forming inside her, one she may never say out loud. What is the point of explaining myself if I'm not really being felt? At that point, she doesn't stop immediately. She gives it a few more chances. She chooses better words. She waits for the right moment. She tries to make it easier for you to understand her. But every time the same pattern repeats, a small part of her effort drops, not dramatically, just slightly. Her messages become shorter, her tone becomes simpler, her emotions become less visible. Not because she has nothing to say, but because she no longer feels safe investing her full expression into a space where it doesn't land the way she needs it to. And this is where most men get confused. because from the outside it looks like things are becoming peaceful. Less arguments, less complaints, less emotional intensity. But what they don't realize is that this is not peace, this is withdrawal. Because real connection has depth, it has emotion, it has expression. When that starts disappearing, it doesn't mean things are getting better. It often means one person has stopped trying to be fully seen. Now think about this: if someone once shared everything with you, small thoughts, random feelings, even things that didn't make complete sense, and now they only share what's necessary, what changed? Did their personality suddenly become quiet, or did their experience teach them that being open is not worth the effort anymore? Because people don't just stop expressing for no reason, they stop when expression feels useless, and when that happens, something even deeper follows. She starts processing things on her own instead of bringing them to you. She stops expecting emotional support in the same way. She becomes more self-contained, more reserved, not out of strength, but out of adaptation. And this is dangerous for the relationship, because connection cannot grow where expression is shrinking. You might still talk every day, you might still sit together, you might still share time, but emotionally, something important has already started fading. And the hardest part is, there is no clear moment where it ended. It just became less and less until one day, what used to feel alive feels distant, even though everything still looks the same on the surface. When emotional neglect builds over time, it doesn't look like something serious in the beginning. There's no loud moment, no clear sign that something is breaking. It feels normal. Conversations still happen. Time is still spent together. Everything on the surface looks fine. But underneath, something starts shifting very slowly. Neglect is not always about ignoring someone completely. It's often about missing the small emotional moments that actually matter. The times when she needed your attention but you were distracted. The times when she wanted to feel close but you were mentally somewhere else. The times when she shared something meaningful and the response didn't match the depth of what she was feeling. And each of these moments may seem small on their own, but what happens when they repeat? That's where the real change begins. She starts noticing a pattern, not consciously at first, but emotionally. A pattern where her feelings are not fully received, where her presence is not fully felt, where the connection she is trying to build doesn't get the same energy in return. So a question slowly starts forming inside her. Am I the only one trying to keep this alive? And that question is dangerous. Because once it appears, it doesn't go away easily. Now think about this. If someone feels like they are the only one carrying the emotional weight, how long can they keep doing it? At first, she tries harder. She gives more attention. She creates more moments. She brings more energy into the relationship, hoping it will bring things back to balance. But when that effort is not met, something inside her begins to tire. Not suddenly, but gradually. Her expectations start lowering. Her excitement starts fading. Her emotional investment starts pulling back. Not because she wants to give up, but because she doesn't feel the same return anymore. And here's where most men misunderstand the situation. They think, she's still here, so everything must be okay. But presence does not always mean connection. A person can stay and still feel alone. Now ask yourself this: when she stopped asking for your attention the way she used to, was that peace? Or was that the moment she started expecting less? Because people don't stop needing connection. They stop asking for it when they feel it won't be given. And that's how neglect grows. Not through big actions, but through repeated absence in small moments that were supposed to bring you closer. And over time, those missed moments don't stay small anymore. They stack, they build, until one day the emotional gap becomes too wide to ignore. And by then it doesn't feel like something just went wrong. It feels like something has been missing for a long time. When comfort slowly turns into carelessness, it doesn't happen in a way that feels wrong at first. In fact, it feels normal. Safe, easy. You start believing that things are stable now, that you don't have to try as much as you did in the beginning. And that's exactly where the shift begins. At the start, effort feels natural. You pay attention, you notice small details. You respond with intention, not because you're forcing it, but because you genuinely care about how she feels. Every reaction matters, every moment feels alive, but over time something changes. You stop noticing the little things. You stop checking in the same way. You assume she understands you without needing to show it, and without realizing it, effort gets replaced by habit. Now ask yourself this: is she still feeling the same energy from you as she did in the beginning? Or has your presence become predictable in a way that feels empty, not stable? Because there is a difference between consistency and emotional absence. Consistency keeps connection alive, but emotional absence slowly removes its depth, and the hardest part is carelessness doesn't look like a big mistake. It looks like small things: not replying with the same attention, not asking how she really feels, not noticing when her tone changes, not realizing when she needed you in a moment you treated as normal. And each time this happens, nothing breaks instantly, but something weakens just a little, and that little keeps repeating. Now think deeper. When she used to feel special in your presence, what created that feeling? Was it just words, or was it the way you made her feel seen, noticed, important? Because feeling special is not a permanent state. It needs to be maintained, not with grand gestures, but with consistent awareness. And here's where it becomes dangerous. You start believing that because she stayed, she will always stay the same way, so you relax your effort. You stop earning the connection you once built, not intentionally, but naturally, and she feels it. Not in one moment, but across many small moments. Now a question forms inside her: is this who he really is? Or has he just stopped caring? And even if she doesn't say it, that question changes how she experiences you. Because when effort drops, meaning drops with it. Moments feel less important, words feel less impactful, and slowly you stop being someone she asterisk feels deeply with asterisk, and become someone she simply asterisk exists around asterisk. And once that shift happens, it's very hard to reverse, because you didn't lose her in one big mistake. You lost her in the moments where you thought nothing was being lost, when comfort became routine, and routine became emotional distance, without you even noticing when the line was crossed. When a woman starts pulling back her effort, it doesn't happen suddenly, and it definitely doesn't happen without a reason. In the beginning, she gives freely. Her attention, her time, her energy, it all comes naturally because she feels connected. She feels like what she is giving is being received, valued, and returned. But what happens when that balance slowly starts breaking? Not in a dramatic way, just in small, repeated moments where her effort is met with less awareness, less attention, or less emotional presence. At first, she doesn't react strongly. She adjusts. She tells herself maybe you're tired, maybe you're distracted, maybe it's just a phase. So she continues giving, but now there is a slight awareness in her mind. Is he noticing what I'm doing, or is this becoming normal for him? And that question matters more than you think. Because when effort starts feeling unnoticed, it slowly starts losing its meaning. Now ask yourself this: if someone keeps giving you something valuable, and you never truly acknowledge it, what happens over time? Do they keep giving the same way, or do they start holding back? She doesn't stop immediately, she reduces slightly. A little less attention, a little less emotional openness, a little less excitement in the way she responds. Not to punish you, but to protect her own energy, because giving without feeling it back creates exhaustion. And here is where most men misunderstand the situation. They think, she's still here, she's still talking, everything is fine, but they don't see the shift in depth. They don't notice that she is no longer showing up the same way emotionally, because presence stayed but effort changed. Now something deeper starts happening inside her. She begins to match your level. If you are less expressive, she becomes less expressive. If you are less attentive, she becomes less attentive. Not consciously, but naturally, because human connection tends to balance itself over time. And then comes a silent realization. If I give less, it doesn't even get noticed. That moment is powerful, because it tells her that her full effort was never truly seen in the first place. And once that realization settles in, she stops going beyond what feels necessary. Now, think about this. When she used to do small things for you, things you didn't even ask for, where did that come from? It came from emotional willingness, from feeling connected enough to give more than required. But when that connection weakens, that willingness disappears first. And this is the part that hurts the relationship the most. Not the absence of big gestures, but the disappearance of small, meaningful effort. Because those small efforts were the real signs of desire, and once she starts pulling back consistently, the relationship may still continue on the surface. But underneath, something important has already shifted, not loudly, not clearly, but deeply, from giving freely to giving carefully, from showing fully to holding back quietly, all because somewhere along the way her efforts stopped feeling like it mattered. When a woman starts feeling emotionally alone in a relationship, it doesn't happen because of one big moment. It happens in small, repeated experiences where she is physically present with someone, but emotionally not met the way she once was. At first, she tries to ignore that feeling. She tells herself it's temporary. She focuses on the good moments, the memories, the reasons she stayed. Because no one wants to accept that something meaningful is slowly changing, but emotional loneliness is not loud. It grows quietly. It shows up in moments like this. She shares something important, and it doesn't land the way it used to. She expresses herself, but the depth of her feeling doesn't fully reach the other side. She looks for emotional response, but receives something lighter, something more surface level. And slowly, a gap begins to form. Now ask yourself, can a relationship survive if one person is emotionally present, while the other is only physically present in the moment? Because presence alone is not connection. Connection is feeling understood without needing to explain everything twice. Over time, she begins to adapt to this gap, not because she wants to, but because she has to. She stops expecting deep emotional responses for every feeling she shares. She becomes more selective about what she expresses, not because she has less to say, but because she has learned that not everything will be received the way she feels it. And this is where things start shifting internally. She becomes more quiet about certain emotions, more controlled in her expression, more independent in how she processes things. On the surface, it may look like she is becoming calmer or stronger, but inside, something different is happening. She is learning emotional self-reliance not by choice, but by necessity. Now here is the important question when she stops coming to you with small emotions, small thoughts, small feelings. Is that maturity? Or is that emotional distance forming quietly? Because people don't stop sharing for no reason. They stop when sharing stops feeling meaningful. And once that shift happens, the relationship changes shape. You may still talk every day. You may still spend time together. You may still call it normal, but the emotional layer that once made everything feel alive starts thinning out. Conversations become shorter in depth, even if not in length. Silences become more frequent, even if not noticeable at first. And connection starts feeling lighter, not peaceful, just less intense, less alive, and the most dangerous part is this: there is no clear moment where it breaks. No single argument, no final decision, just a slow emotional withdrawal that both people feel differently at different times. One person slowly gives less, the other slowly stops, expecting more, until one day, what remains is routine, not connection. and by the time it is recognized, it already feels far away. When someone stops trying in a relationship, it doesn't always mean they stopped caring. More often, it means they stopped feeling that their effort is making a difference, and that realization doesn't come in one moment. It builds slowly through repeated experiences. At first, she still tries to fix things in small ways. She adjusts how she speaks. She chooses better timing to express herself. She tries not to make things complicated, because deep down, she still believes the connection can return to what it used to be. But then a pattern starts forming. Not everything she says gets the same attention it once did. Not every emotional moment receives the same response. Not every effort creates the same closeness, and even if these changes are small, her mind starts registering them. Now ask yourself what happens when effort stops feeling effective. Do people continue giving the same energy? Or do they slowly start protecting themselves? She doesn't suddenly stop caring. She gradually starts conserving her emotional energy. Instead of reacting immediately, she pauses more. Instead of expressing everything, she filters more. Instead of investing fully, she starts holding back slightly, not because she wants distance, but because she is unconsciously learning where her energy is not being fully met. And here is where the misunderstanding begins. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. There are still conversations. There is still contact. There is still presence. But inside the dynamic, something has changed. She is no longer fully emotionally open. She is no longer fully spontaneous. She is no longer fully invested in every moment. And that shift is not loud, it is subtle. But powerful. Now think deeper. When someone stops sharing their deeper thoughts with you, what does that actually mean? Is it because they have nothing left to say, or because they no longer feel it will land the same way it used to? Because emotional sharing is not just about expression, it is about response. And when response changes, expression changes automatically. Over time, she begins to adapt to this new reality. She becomes more self-contained. She processes emotions more privately. She stops expecting deep emotional engagement in return for her openness, and slowly her emotional dependence on the relationship reduces, not out of strength, but out of adjustment. Now ask yourself this honestly. If someone slowly stops coming to you for emotional comfort, what changed? Did they suddenly become independent, or did they slowly learn that emotional comfort is no longer consistently available there? And this is where relationships quietly shift, not through fights, not through decisions, but through repeated emotional mismatches that go unnoticed in real time. One person gives slightly less, the other expects slightly less, and without realizing it, both start meeting each other at a lower emotional level than before. And the most important part is this: nothing feels broken in a single moment, but something important has already changed in pattern. And once patterns change, feelings rarely stay the same. When emotional connection starts weakening in a relationship, it doesn't feel like something is breaking at first. Everything still looks normal from the outside. Conversations still happen, time is still shared, and life continues as usual. But inside that normal routine, something very important starts changing quietly. At the beginning, she is emotionally responsive. She reacts, she engages, she shows interest in small things, and she naturally puts effort into keeping the connection alive. Not because she is forced to, but because she feels something meaningful in the exchange. But over time, she begins to notice something subtle. Her emotional energy is not always being matched. Now ask yourself, what happens when someone keeps showing up emotionally, but doesn't feel the same return consistently? Do they keep showing up the same way, or do they slowly start adjusting without even realizing it? She doesn't make a sudden decision to pull back. Instead, she starts observing more than reacting. She listens more carefully, but speaks a little less emotionally. She engages, but not with the same depth as before. not because she has stopped caring, but because she is starting to feel the imbalance. And here is where things become interesting. From the outside, nothing seems wrong. There is still communication. There is still presence. There is still interaction. But emotionally, the intensity is changing, not disappearing, just lowering. Now think about this: when someone no longer feels fully emotionally met, what is the natural response? Do they increase their effort indefinitely, or do they eventually begin to protect their inner world? Because emotional energy is not infinite when it is not being replenished. Slowly, she begins to shift. She becomes more self-aware in conversations. She chooses what to share more carefully. She stops expressing every small emotional detail. Not because she is hiding, but because she is no longer expecting the same depth of response. And this is where most people misunderstand what is happening. They think everything is fine because nothing has broken, but emotional connection doesn't break suddenly. It dissolves gradually through small moments where effort was not fully received or not fully recognized. Now ask yourself, if someone who once shared everything with you becomes quiet about their inner world, what does that really mean? Did they suddenly change, or did their experience slowly teach them that openness is no longer fully returned? And once that learning happens, behavior changes naturally, not dramatically, but permanently. Less emotional sharing, less spontaneous expression, less expectation from the relationship, and more internal processing alone. From there, the relationship may continue as usual on the surface, but the emotional layer that once made it feel alive begins to fade into something more routine. Not because love disappeared in one moment, but because emotional exchange slowly stopped feeling equal over time. When emotional distance starts forming in a relationship, it never announces itself. It doesn't come with a clear moment where someone says things are changing now. Instead, it begins in silence, in small gaps that slowly start becoming normal. At first, everything still feels connected. Conversations happen, time is shared, and nothing seems visibly wrong. But inside that routine, something subtle is shifting. Not in actions, but in feeling. Now ask yourself, what happens when emotional effort is no longer met with the same depth it once received? Does a person continue expressing themselves the same way, or do they slowly begin to change without even realizing it? She doesn't stop caring suddenly. She starts adjusting, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. She begins to observe more than she expresses. She starts holding back small emotions, not because they don't exist anymore, but because they don't always feel received in the same way. And this is where the real shift begins, because emotional expression is not just about having feelings, it is about feeling safe enough to share them. Now, think deeper. When someone shares something meaningful and the response feels lighter than expected, what happens inside them? Do they ignore it, or does a small part of them remember it next time they feel like opening up? Because human memory doesn't only store events, it stores emotional outcomes. So slowly, she begins to change her pattern, not because she planned to, but because experience is teaching her something silently. She starts choosing what to share more carefully. She starts filtering her emotions before expressing them. She starts keeping certain feelings inside instead of bringing them outside. Now here is the important question. If someone who used to share everything with you becomes selective about what they share, what does that actually indicate? Is it maturity, or is it emotional recalibration based on response? Because people don't reduce expression for no reason. They reduce it when expression starts feeling less effective, and over time, this creates a new pattern. Not silence completely, but reduced emotional depth. Not absence, but distance within presence. They are still there, still talking, still interacting, but something essential has shifted in how deeply they are connecting. And the most dangerous part is this: it doesn't feel like loss in the beginning. It feels like normal change. Less intensity, less emotional urgency, less need to express everything, until one day what used to feel deeply connected starts feeling slightly disconnected. Not broken, just faded, and by the time it becomes noticeable, it has already been happening for a long time in the background. When emotional distance slowly enters a relationship, it doesn't start with rejection, it starts with adjustment. Two people still talk, still share space, still behave like everything is fine on the surface, but underneath that normal flow, something important begins to shift without being announced. At first, she is still emotionally open. She still reacts naturally, still shares her thoughts, still tries to stay connected in small ways, because she assumes connection is something that stays the same if nothing big goes wrong. But over time, something starts changing in her experience. Her emotional input is not always being matched with the same depth. Now ask yourself what happens when someone repeatedly gives emotional energy but feels it is not fully met in return. Do they continue at the same level, or do they slowly begin to change without realizing it? She doesn't make a sudden decision to pull back. Instead, she starts observing more carefully. She listens more than she expresses. She thinks more before sharing. She filters her emotions before speaking them out loud, not because she has stopped feeling, but because she is starting to notice a pattern. And here is the part most people miss. From the outside, everything still looks normal. There is still communication. There is still time spent together. There is still presence, but emotionally, the depth is no longer the same. It becomes lighter, less spontaneous, less open, more controlled. Now, think about this. When someone feels that their emotional openness is not always fully received, what naturally happens inside them? Do they keep expressing freely forever, or do they slowly start protecting their inner world? Because emotional protection is not a choice at first, it is a response. And this is where change becomes permanent. She starts sharing less of her inner thoughts. Not because she has nothing to say, but because she has learned to expect less emotional return from what she says. And once expectation changes, behavior automatically follows. Now ask yourself this: if someone who once told you everything now only tells you what is necessary, what does that actually mean? Did they suddenly become private? Or did they slowly realize that emotional depth is no longer being met the same way? Because people don't stop opening up without reason. They stop when opening up stops feeling meaningful. And over time, this creates a new emotional reality, less vulnerability, less emotional risk-taking, less spontaneous expression, not because the connection is gone, but because the emotional reward for expressing has reduced. From the outside, it still looks like a relationship, but inside, the structure has changed. It is no longer built on open emotional exchange. It is built on controlled interaction, and that shift rarely feels dramatic in the beginning. It feels normal. Until one day, normal no longer feels like connection. It feels like distance that has quietly settled in. When a relationship reaches a point where things still look normal, but don't feel the same anymore, it usually means the change didn't happen suddenly. It happened slowly, in layers, without any clear moment of breakdown. At first, both people still believe everything is fine because nothing obvious is wrong. There is no major argument, no clear ending, no dramatic shift. Life continues in the same rhythm, but emotional connection doesn't depend only on routine. It depends on depth. Now ask yourself what happens when depth starts reducing, but routine stays the same. Do people notice it immediately, or do they adapt to it slowly until it becomes the new normal? She doesn't suddenly withdraw. She adjusts quietly, naturally, without even labeling it. At first, she still tries to keep emotional closeness alive. She still shares, still reacts, still shows interest, but over time her experience starts changing. Not because she wants distance, but because the emotional response she expects is no longer consistently felt. And this creates a shift inside her thinking, not loud, not obvious, but real. Now here is something important from the outside, nothing looks broken. But inside the interaction, emotional intensity is no longer the same. Conversations become more functional than emotional. Sharing becomes more selective. Responses become more measured. Not because she stopped feeling, but because she started filtering what she shares based on past emotional outcomes. Now think deeper. When someone repeatedly feels that their emotional openness is not fully met, what happens naturally over time? Do they continue opening up endlessly, or do they slowly begin to protect what they share because emotional protection is not planned? It is learned through experience, and once that learning happens, behavior changes permanently. She no longer expresses every thought. She no longer reacts to everything emotionally. She no longer invests without thinking. Not because the relationship is over, but because her emotional system has recalibrated. Now ask yourself this: if someone who once shared everything with you now feels more distant, but still stays present, what does that actually mean? Did they change overnight? Or did they slowly stop feeling the same emotional return from the connection? Because people don't reduce emotional depth randomly. They reduce it when depth is no longer consistently received. And this is the final stage most people fail to notice. Everything still looks normal, but emotional exchange has changed form. Less vulnerability, less spontaneity, less emotional urgency, more control, more distance within presence. And by the time it becomes obvious, it doesn't feel like something broke. It feels like something slowly faded while everything else continued as usual.